It's the weekly PhD blog, week 22. I missed week 21. I was up in Sydney and I got distracted. It's been a lot happening over the last 2 weeks. So, back in Melbourne now, as you can see, if the grey sky and the black coat wasn't enough to give it away. So last week, some interesting developments. Caught up with a few people up in Sydney that are working in the space, particularly the Ethics Centre, who's just released an AI code of ethics. Very good stuff. And a few interesting studies I got through in the time period as well. Come across an interesting novel ethical theory, specifically for AI governance, called GRN, or Gradiated Responsibility Networks. It's a method of distributing responsibility across the many players that are involved in any given AI application, including its development and decay over time. So very impressive little framework there, very similar to some prior work I've done actually back in the day, but never published. Took it to a couple of conferences on the indivisibility of responsibility. Singer's Pond, or Beyond Singer's Pond as I termed at the time. Very simple concept, basically being that if you've got 10 people standing around a pond watching a child drown, any one of which was capable of intervening, are they all 10% responsible for the death? Obvious answer is no. They're all 100% responsible for the death because any one of them could have intervened. This obviously has some pretty significant implications for how we calculate responsibility in any complex environment. So, happily, that GRN framework accounts for that, which is great. There can be more than 100% responsibility in every given situation. I do have a few questions about it. There's quite a bit of... They attempt to quantify several of the factors, which is always tricky in ethics because of the variables involved. But they've attempted to measure things like intentionality, which is highly subjective and therefore completely unknowable, I would debate. So I'm going to chase up on that. Also had a little bit of a revelation, which I'm going to have to do in a separate video. So the two mathematical theorems or systems used for LLMs in particular, linear regression and categorization using a sigmoid function. I had a little moment driving up to Sydney where I suddenly had a crashing realization that that's basically deontology and consequentialism in function. I'm not sure what to do with that information as yet. I'm going to have to illustrate this a bit more clearly, but there's some definite thoughts to be had there. The one implication may be that the AI is actually way better at ethics than we probably thought if you can align the function with the two sets of functions. Had not occurred to me to, very, very random thought. Still developing that one. This week, I found myself, had another case study interview for agentic AI in CVE this morning, very early this morning, hence me looking like I'm 10 years older than normal. Just exhausted. Whew. This time with a couple of people over in Canada and the US. I won't mention the client at this point, but it's confirming that agentic is being used in that space with mixed degrees of success. Certainly pointed out that there's any significant gap right now in terms of globalized standards for this sort of thing, which is exactly what I'm working on, so that's good news. The other thing is that, and thank you Matteo once again, my supervisor, had recommended that I get involved with the Summer Institute for Computational Social Sciences, which is slightly ironic, but it's a Northern Hemisphere term, so winter school in our case. Bloody freezing today, Jesus. So that's a 2-week workshop, which I'm currently at right now at RMIT University. Good to be back in the old stomping grounds. And fascinating. Looking at that as a field specifically, sort of an emergent academic field, halfway in between the computational sciences and the social sciences, which, introduces all of the problems of both of those fields. We just had a whole conversation this morning about theory and whether or not CSS has, or computational social science has sufficient theory, which I was quick to point out it's probably got too much theory because it's got to synthesize all the theory that comes with computational sciences and the social sciences, neither of which is exactly short on theory. Synthesizing it, though, on the other hand, is definitely a problem. Oh, don't even get me started on the concept of personas. It's something we're going to have to dig into later. Got a very serious problem with that. Actually, I will get started on it. Why not? Personas are when you take quantitative data, train an LLM on that quantitative data, and then ask it to build a persona or a fake person based on a representation of that quantitative data. Apparently this is common and widespread in this space, and I can definitely see why. It's very convenient. It'd certainly be very, very easy to create participants for your research or training data as a result for the LLMs, which tend to prefer to deal with people, especially if you are asking them to deal with individuals. Small problem. That's the dictionary definition of a stereotype. Take this quantitative data and come up with a person that it maps to. And the problem is that no matter where you map it on that bell curve of the quantitative data, it's always going to be a stereotype because it's not a real person. Worse, I'd go so far as to say that you're basically falsifying qualitative data. That's not actual data. That's faked data. So if that's a widespread practice, we have a fairly serious problem on our hands. Anyway, I think I need to learn more about that phenomenon before I go ahead and start criticizing it publicly, like I just did, but I do need to learn more about it. Weird practice and very emblematic of an emergent field where something is convenient, but not a good idea. Imagine what would happen if you asked it to build a persona based on an African-American male. Is it going to speak in Ebonics? If not, why not? Is it going to be... Yeah, you take my meaning. There's no winning there. Either you're sanitizing or you're faking. And you're faking it in either direction. So anyway, we're going to have to dig into that one a little bit. So plenty going on. Matteo, my supervisor's back from leave next week, so it'll be good to catch him up on everything there. And I now have 2 case studies, so that's good. Potentially 3, maybe 4 in the works. I don't know, Ali, if you're Professor Ellison Buchanan over in Ottawa, has been extremely helpful. So wonderful, thank you. And you nearly made it worthwhile getting up at 6 this morning. Time differences, eh? Good times. Anyway, so that's the kind of state of play. Plenty happening, plenty more to happen, but one thing it is making very clear is that the current version of the research question is looking pretty solid. We can use agentic AI in this space. In fact, we should use agentic AI in this space because it's inevitably going to be deployed. So we need to come up with some guidelines for it. Till next week.